That's a nice one. Would you like that? Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Now, I'd just like to thank everybody who has sent cards and get well wishes for Nigel. It's completely gone to his head. He's now insufferable prima donna and he only contacts me through his agent. But he is getting much better, thank you very much. To the extent that he's able to eat apples, aren't you? Do you want an apple? Hang on a sec. Wait there. Oh, go on. Good boy. Now, this is the last programme of the year, I'm afraid, but we've still got lots on. I shall be in the jewel garden, tidying it up ready for winter, looking back over the highs and some of the lows of the year, and also planting for spring in the damp garden. Rachel is visiting a blind gardener in Swansea, who, although she's never seen a plant in her life, has still made an extraordinary garden.
I love plants. They speak to me. They say something about the world and life, and it just makes you feel richer and better to be among them.
Joe is visiting an exceptional gardener too. He's up in Lincolnshire, growing fabulous veg on his allotment at the age of 92. And Carol is in Cumbria in search of one of the rarest plants in the British Isles.
Look at it. It's perfectly at peace. It's in its home. It's the flower I've come to see.
At this time of year, it's always a trade-off between hanging on to what's good for as long as possible and then just accepting that some things are just not going to get better. So they're going to look worse and worse, so the thing to do is to clear them out of the way. And there's a number of virtues in doing that, because not only does it look better, but also it gives things around them a better chance. A good example is in here. You can see how this cosmos, if I step through there, has fallen. Now, the cosmos have done really well this year, and they're still flowering strongly, but it's a downward process. Things are not going to get better. It's an annual, so what we can say is, right, you come up, just pull it out to the compost heap with it. That's it. Its job is done. So that goes in the barrel. This Lysimachia, which is not an annual, but it's falling everywhere. It's wet and sodden, and it gets slimy and horrible. So the thing to do is to cut that back. And I think this is a job that wants to be done really spread over 2 or 3 or even 4 weeks. Just come in there and work through taking layers off as you go. So don't feel you need to get it all done perfectly first time round. All the buddleias have done well. That buddleia there, it's a Wariana hybrid, has gone on flowering and flowering, and here we are, it's still going. Certainly not going to cut that back in a hurry. I wouldn't cut back this euphorbia because I love the way that the moisture sits on it, and when the light hits it, you get these dancing diamonds above it. But the tithonia in there has had it. I'm afraid that is now grey and sad, but it doesn't matter because it's been brilliant this year. The tithonia have been superb. And of course, if you're intending to put bulbs into your borders, and I want to put more tulips in, then you need to clear at this time of year. You can't leave it till next spring because otherwise there's not space to plant and you can't see where you want them. Of course, the jewel garden doesn't really get going at all until April. And this year, the wallflowers and the tulips look fantastic. You get that first intense colour of the year. And then you go into high summer, these plants come muscling in with a burst of colour. And I thought the jewel garden actually looked good this year. I always said it would take 2 to 3 years to reach fruition, and it's getting there. And a lot of people have said it's been a bad year for gardens. I don't think it has. I think it's been a bad year for gardeners. It's been pretty miserable. But plants, on the whole, have liked it. There have been some exceptions, but on the whole, they haven't done badly at all. Of course, in the end, the jewel garden is all about colour. It's about creating the palette and then managing it to maximum effect for as long as possible right through the season, and it's tricky. However experienced you are and however good you are at seeing colours and using them, it's quite demanding. Well, if it's tricky for us with good eyesight, imagine what gardening is like if you're blind. And Rachel has been down to Swansea to meet Andrea Gordon, who has been blind from birth and has yet made a wonderful garden from a blank canvas.
Well, we're surrounded here by this wonderful leafy gorgeousness. The plants are just, they're clearly very happy here. What was the starting point to this garden?
Well, you see that little Acer there? That was, when I bought it, it was £2 in Woolies. Probably about 10 years ago. It was about this high in a little box.
Well, it's enormous now. And then tell me about the pond that's just in front of it.
I wanted a pond that I wouldn't accidentally walk into, so it's got raised up sides to warn me that it's there. And you can sit on the side and dangle your fingers in the water and feed the fish. And the shape is just a regular shape, like a lot of the shapes in this garden are quite straight lines to help me to navigate around it, really.
Now, don't tell me you dug that all by yourself.
No, my husband Andrew has the credit for digging that. Before it was filled with water, he dropped me in the middle, and I know, because from personal experience, it's kind of this deep in the centre.
What about the planting that's just here to the side slightly of the Acer?
In front of me here, there is a bed with lots of conifers that I like to have for the winter because it means there's always something going on. And then around to my right, all the astilbes, which love that slightly damp, heavy ground there and have that same feathery feel to their leaves as the Acer.
This is great, isn't it? Where has the passion for gardening come from?
I was sent away to boarding school when I was 5 and I gained a lot of comfort and solace from being outside and walking through the trees and touching the plants in the grounds. Always made me feel that I was close to home. I love plants. They speak to me. They say something about the world and life, and it just makes you feel richer and better to be among them.
What is it that draws you to a plant?
Mostly the texture and the overall shape of the plant. Sometimes the fragrance, but with the rosemaries, they're a lovely shape and they have a beautiful fragrance. But the roses, of course, have their own loveliness, and when they're in flower and there are some buds here, and actually getting this close to them, I can anticipate when they're going to come into flower and come and look for them.
What is it about roses that you love particularly?
I love the shape of the flowers, but I love the feel, and I love the idea of planting something that is really no more a bundle of twigs in the autumn, and then something incredible happens where the next time you come there are all the lovely soft leaves and eventually such stunningly lovely flowers, and the fact that I can plant it and that bit of magic happens.
What does the garden mean to you?
It's my little world. I know every little bit of it intimately well. I picture it in my mind. I can be indoors and I see every little plant. It gives me something else to think about other than some of the restrictions I have in my life. And it's something positive and creative, and it gives me joy, and it's where I come to play.
I think that what is really important, whether you're sighted or not, is that intimacy with your garden. Knowing every inch of it is just as valuable as any amount of horticultural technique. Of course, it's changing daily now. By New Year, this will be completely devoid of leaves. It'll be a much bleaker, bonier place. So I want to plant now to give it a bit of energy and a bit of life amongst that bleakness next February and March. And I'm going to give it that energy by using bark. Now this is a dogwood, Cornus alba sibirica, and it does have the most fantastic red sheen to its bark, especially when it's young. So these new shoots look at their very best in the first few months of the year. January, February and March, which of course is when there's so little that's here. And I'll be able to see them because of course all this cover will be gone. That time of year there's nothing blocking the sightline to it or the light to it because that's facing south. So this will be flooded with light and these red stems will shine through. So at this point I just want to get this in the ground. Now Cornus are very adaptable. Tend to think of them as needing wet conditions, but actually particularly Cornus alba will grow almost anywhere. It does better in sunlight though, so don't give it too much shade. This is a big plant which can just be popped in. Of course the name dogwood has nothing to do with dogs. It's a corruption of a Scandinavian word, dag, and refers to a skewer or spike because these stems are quite hard given how young they are, and they were used to be used for skewers, occasionally even arrows, and that's come down to us as dogwood. Now this is a fairly mature plant, so you can see that it's got a pretty compact root ball. When you've got roots like this, it's not a bad idea just to break them up a bit. Stimulate them to grow away from this very compact mat. I'm going to use a little bit of mycorrhizal fungi because there's no question that it does help the relationship between the roots and the soil. It just speeds up that interactivity. But if you are going to use it, it's absolutely essential that there is a direct contact from the mycorrhizae to the roots. So don't just sprinkle it loosely. Either do it where you know the root's going to touch or directly onto the roots themselves. And then into the hole too. And that can go in there like that. And then just backfill. Firm that in. And obviously give that a really good soak, even though the ground is quite wet. Now, to have this looking at its very best, it's going to need regular, dramatic pruning. That means cutting either all the plant or half of it right down to the ground every year. That will stimulate new growth, and it's the new growth that has this fantastic colour. And also, it means that I'll have lots of material to take cuttings. And my plan is to spread it right the way around the back behind the pond. So when you come in here in March, you'll see this blaze of red rippling around the curve behind the pond. It should look absolutely fantastic. Right, that's a Cornus alba. I've got another one I want to plant over there. This is Cornus flaviramia. It has wonderful olive green yellow stems that intensify with colour in early spring and makes a really good combination with the red stems of the Cornus alba sibirica. It's a dogwood that prefers slightly damper conditions, so if you've got a wettish spot, it's the ideal plant. This bit of the garden does get very wet. When the flood comes in, it actually comes in here first of all, but this particular dogwood won't mind at all. It's really good for a damp patch. Now, Carol has been to see an area which couldn't be more difficult. She's visiting the coastline of Cumbria, where you have fantastic sand dunes, which are wind-blasted and very often dry. And yet, there's a range of plants that thrive there.
This is Walnut Island, a place I've always longed to visit. I wanted to come and see for myself the rich diversity of the flora here and the beautiful habitats in which they grow. But it's a very special quest for me too, because I'm hoping to come face to face with a flower which has achieved almost mythical status as far as I'm concerned. But before I search for the flower that makes this place so special, I want to take a closer look at the plant that binds this entire island together. This is just such a typical site on one edge of Walnut Island. And it's this plant, marron grass. It binds the sand together and creates these wonderful sand dunes. This is the root of the marron grass. It's strong, robust. They invade the sand, and everywhere along these leaf nodes, it's got the capability of making a new shoot. Now, sometimes after a storm, it can be completely covered, buried, feet deep. But it's undaunted. It just thrusts these new shoots up and keeps on going. And look at the leaves. When it's raining, they open up, flatten themselves so they can drink in any rainwater that's available. But when it's hot and dry or very windy, they roll themselves up so they reduce their surface to the very, very minimum. It's perfectly adapted to living in pure sand. This is my first visit to Cumbria's Walnut Island, but for Steve Ben, he gets to see it just about every day. He's the manager of the North Walnut Reserve, which helps to conserve the island. What's it like working here?
It's fabulous, Carol. I love it. Mum and Dad used to bring it over here for weekends on sunny days. We appreciated the fact we could run around with just a pair of shorts on. We didn't appreciate really what the habitats were, what the flowers and the birds and the insects were that were here.
Yeah.
And because of that, the need to protect it.
Yeah.
And that's where I come in, Carol.
Exactly, and you get a job.
I get a job out of it.
And what a job,
Yeah.
what a fantastic job. But these special habitats, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just one or two of them, is it? It's a whole series.
No. If you took a cross section right across east to west, you've got your intertidal environment, you've got the shingle environment, you've got your dune grassland, you've got your heathland.
And it's just rich, isn't it,
It
really?
is, and it's in a relatively small area.
With so many habitats to explore, I want to see the wildflowers this place has to offer. We begin our search in the dunes.
Look at this for an absolute beauty.
It is so dainty and delicate and so very, very pretty. Dune pansy.
Dune pansy it is.
Do you know, I've only ever seen it in books.
Is that right, really?
Yeah.
Well, there you
But
go.
Isn't it special?
Plants here have to be really hardy, real tough. Hard case of the plant world is.
This has to be the showiest one here, in fact. It's
Gorgeous, yeah.
probably one of the showiest on the island. Glossium flavum, isn't it? The horned poppy.
Yep.
And so called because of these seed pods.
Well, that's something you just taught me, Carol. I wasn't aware of that, actually.
What happens is, when it goes brown and the whole thing is ripe, it splits asunder and all these seeds fly all over the place.
Fabulous dispersal mechanism then.
Yeah, it is. It
Brilliant.
is. And perfect adaptation like all these other plants
Yeah.
too. Steep slope, carpeted with beautiful flowers of geranium sanguineum. But just over here, look what I found. The flower I've come to see. It's geranium sanguineum lancastriense. It grows only on Walnut Island. Look at it. It's perfectly at peace. It's in its home. Do you know, I love gardening. I love putting plants together and seeing flowers in my garden. But somehow, when you come out into the wild and you see flowers growing as they're supposed to be in their very own natural surroundings, there's something much more moving about it. It's a much deeper experience.
Now it's just 6 weeks to Christmas. And it was 6 weeks ago to the day that I planted those paper white daffodils, which are just coming into flower. But if you go and buy some paper white daffodil bulbs and pop them up, put them somewhere warm, windowsill or a greenhouse, give them a little bit of water, I bet you that they are flowering for you on Christmas Day. Now, even if you don't want to plant daffodils. Here are some things that you can be getting on with this weekend. If you've got a cold frame or a greenhouse, it's a good idea to give it a thorough clean now before winter sets in. All you need is a bit of warm water and detergent and some elbow grease. This will get rid of any pests or diseases that are lingering, and most importantly of all, let in maximum winter light. As you put the garden to bed for winter, don't neglect to look after your tools. Now is a good time to sharpen your secateurs ready for winter pruning. A tip is to take a felt pen and mark a line along the very edge of the cutting blade. And then, using an oil stone and working round and round, remove that mark. Turn the blade over, and keeping the oil stone flat on the surface of the blade this time, work again to remove any burr that has been turned over, and what should be left is a razor-sharp edge. If you've got a spare piece of ground in your vegetable garden or allotment, dig it over. Use a spade, not a fork, and leave it just as it falls. The weather will then work at it over the winter, breaking it down. By next spring, you should just have to rake it over and you'll have a fine tilth ready for use. And for more jobs that you can do, not just this weekend, but throughout the winter, go to our website. The great thing about growing vegetables is not only does it produce delicious food, but it's good for you. It makes you feel good. It's enjoyable. And it's never too late to start. And as Joe has found out, it's also never too late to stop.
Anyone who's had an allotment knows it takes dedication and a lot of hard work to keep it going. But that doesn't put some people off. Oh no, a local lad from Grantham in Lincolnshire around here has kept his plot enthusiastically going for over 40 years. War veteran Walter Partridge is 92 years young. From lunchtime till dusk, you'll find this champion grower tending his full-size double allotment every day. And the produce is impressive. When did you actually first start gardening?
When I was a boy, 7, 8 years old, my father had a little garden for me. Well, say a little garden, 2 square metres, you would say. And then when I came out the army and got married, I thought, may as well have a garden.
Your plot is absolutely immaculate. It's full of produce, it's nice and tidy, pretty much weed-free.
Well, it's not so good as it should be, because you know what the weather's been like this year.
All your years of experience, Walter, over 40 years on this allotment, what would be your top tips if someone takes over a new plot?
Make a compost heap, crop rotation, very important.
What crop rotation do you use here?
Potatoes, brassicas, roots, and then the odds and sods.
I like that. Potatoes, brassicas, roots, odds and sods. Okay,
Yeah.
Everybody got that at home.
This is where I keep my tomatoes.
I love your greenhouse, Walter.
It's an improvised one, this is.
You don't say.
So,
Full of character, just like you are.
let's just try one.
Which one is this then? Gardener's Delight, did he say?
Yeah.
Ah, good tomato, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Good flavour, aren't they?
that is good flavour. Your leeks are looking fantastic, actually, aren't they?
They're not bad at all.
Not bad, yeah. I'm very jealous of your soil.
Yeah.
You've been working it for over 40
Yeah,
years,
well,
so it must be pretty good stuff by now.
Yes.
Did you put a load of muck on there?
Every other year.
What are your top tips with your Brussels?
Firm ground, really, for Brussels. Somebody once said to me, I don't know whether it's right, that the best Brussels he ever grew, he made a hole with the crowbar. They do like firm ground.
Really firm them in.
Yes.
You've got to be pleased with these. It's
Yes.
been a good year for runners. What variety is this then?
Enorma.
Enorma.
And then that row there's White Lady. Do you want me to pick some?
Shall I help you?
You can do if you find some.
There's millions of them.
I know you say crop rotation,
Yeah.
but it doesn't hurt beans to grow them in the same place every year.
Okay.
Because when they're finished, they do put nitrogen back in the soil from the roots.
They really are gorgeous. Right, you've shown me your beans.
Now we'll look at the bees, do we?
Yeah. Now, can you show me the bees? Yeah, lovely. Are they right down the other end?
Right down at the bottom, yes.
Okay. How lively are these bees, Walter?
Very lively this morning.
Very lively.
Yeah.
Is
we'll
it
have to
safe?
be- Not really safe, but
You've got 5 hives here.
yes.
How much honey do you get from them?
You can say average about £40 per hive.
£40 per hive? Wow, that's a lot of honey. And are they great for the allotment in general? Do they help pollinate all the plants?
You should know your gardener. They do the allotments as much good as they do me with pollinating.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll never complain of feeling a bit creaky again. I've got years of gardening ahead of me. These grass borders will be allowed to gradually decline across the winter. I shan't cut them back at all. And that's partly because they look lovely as they fade away, one of the best things in winter, but also because it gives really good cover for insects, small mammals and birds. And also because we encourage them in. I do actually feed them all winter. And if you're going to feed birds, just remember one thing, that once you start to put the food out, you've got to continue right through till spring, because otherwise they fly in, use an awful lot of energy, there's nothing there for them, and then that can't be replaced. Well, that's it for this year. I'll see you back here next spring. But until then, have a really good Christmas and New Year. Bye-bye.